In this video, you will learn how to find the percent of a number. Now, to find a percent of a number, there are two different ways that we can do this. The first way is we can write the percent as a fraction, then multiply by the number, or we could write the percent as a decimal, then multiply by the number. So for example, here we are to find 50% of 84. So what we do is we take 50% and multiply by 84. And by the way, this word of, you can almost think of that word as being translated as multiply. So if you see this in other contexts as well, the word of will usually mean multiply. So we take 50% times 84. Well, to do that, we, using method 1, could convert that percent to a fraction. So 50%, remember percent means out of 100, or divide by 100. So this is 50 over 100, which could reduce, and assuming we know how to reduce, we would get 1/2. So what we do is we take 1/2 times 84. So what is 1/2 times 84? Well, you can think of that as 1/2 of 84, or 84 divided by 2, same thing. That gives you 42. So your solution is 42. Now using method 2, we can get the same answer, but in this case, we would take this percent and write it as a decimal. So what is 50% as a decimal? Well, to convert to a decimal, we move our decimal point 2 places to the left, 1, 2, to get 0.50, or 0.5. So now we take 0.5 times 84, and when you do that, if you multiply it out by hand, you would have to go through this process. 5 times 4 is 20, carry the 2. 5 times 8 is 40, plus 2 is 42. Move the decimal point over one place because we have one digit after the decimal point here. So move the decimal point one place in our answer to get 42. So notice we get the same answer with both methods. Now sometimes converting to a fraction will be simpler. Sometimes converting to a decimal will be simpler. You have to kind of look at the problem and see when you multiply which one would be a simpler multiplication problem. Example 2, we now have find 30% of 45. So we're going to show you both methods, and if you're doing this on your own, you can choose whichever method you prefer, whichever one you find to be easiest, unless of course the directions specify what to do. But here, using method 1, write the percent as a fraction first. So 30% as a fraction would be 30 over 100, which you can divide top and bottom by 10 to get 3 over 10. So we have simplified our fraction. So 30% is 3/10. So 30% of 45, or 30% times 45, we take the 3/10 times by 45. Now to do this, we could write 45 as 45 over 1. And before you multiply, you could simplify first by dividing the top and the bottom by the same number. So look at the 45 and the 10. You can divide both by 5. Right? 45 divided by 5 is 9. 10 divided by 5 is 2. And that cannot simplify any further, so now we can multiply 3 times 9 on the top to get 27. 2 times 1 on the bottom gives you 2. So you have 27 over 2, which you can write as a mixed number. We take 27 divided by 2. 2 goes into 27 13 times. 13 times 2 is 26. Subtract, the remainder is 1. You can write that as a fraction, where you have 1 over the 2. So your final answer is 13.5. Using method 2, we're going to get the same answer, but here we convert the 30% to a decimal. So what is 30% as a decimal? Well, you move the decimal point 2 places to the left, 1, 2, to get 0.30, or 0.3. And then to find 30% of 45, we can take the 0.3 times that by 45. So this one, when you multiply, you're going to have 3 times 5, which is 15. Carry the 1. 3 times 4 plus 1 is 13. Our decimal point goes over one place, so we have 13.5 as our solution. Notice we have the same answer, 13.5 or 13.5. That is the same thing. So that is example 2. We have a third example where we are to find 75% of 36. So we're going to use, again, both methods. So method 1 is we convert the percent to a fraction. 75%, you can write that as 75 over 100, which you can simplify. You can actually divide top and bottom both by 25. 75 divided by 25 is 3. 100 divided by 25 is 4. So 75% is the same thing as 3/4. So when we take 75% times 36, we now have 3/4 times 36. This one, the fraction method, will be probably simpler actually, because here, look at the 36 and the 4. You can divide both by 4 to simplify to get 9 and 1. So the top we have 3 times 9 or 27. The bottom we have 1 times 1 or 1. So we have 27 over 1, which is 27. Method 2 will actually be more difficult, where you can convert the percent to a decimal by moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. That gives you 0.75. So to find 75% of 36, we do 75% times 36, and now we have 0.75 times 36. So this one's more difficult because we have larger numbers to multiply. So sometimes the fraction method will be simpler, sometimes converting to a decimal will be simpler. So this one will be a little more tedious. We have to do 6 times 5 to get 30, carry the 3. 6 times 7 plus 3 is 45. Put a 0 and repeat. 3 times 5 is 15. Take the 5, carry the 1. 3 times 7 plus 1 is 22. We add these together, we get 0. 10, carry the 1. 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. Then we have a 2 right there. And because we have 2 digits after the decimal point, our decimal point moves over 2 places, 1, 2, to get 27.00 or 27. So notice we have the same solution using either method. So if the directions tell you which method to use, make sure you follow the directions. But if not, you can choose whichever method is simpler for you. Now to finish off, we want to look at a couple real-life problems. So here we see our first real-life example, where let's say you are buying a pair of shoes. And this pair of shoes was originally $120, but it is discounted by 30%. The question is, what is the sale price? So there's actually 2 different approaches here as well that we can use to find the answer to this problem. So method 1 is we can find what is 30% of 120. Realize that is what number is going to be subtracted from 120. That is how much is being discounted. So we can find 30% of 120, then subtract that from the original price to find your sale price. So the discount, if we find 30% of 120, we can do 0.3 times 120. 3 times 120 is 360. But we've moved the decimal point over one place because we have one digit here after the decimal point. So it goes over right here to get 36. So the discount is 36. That means you can subtract that discount from 120 to get your sale price. So 120 minus 36. If you do that correctly, you're going to get 84. So the sale price would be $84. So this is one approach we can use to find the solution. A second approach would be to realize that $120 is the original price. That is 100%. Right? That is the full price. But if it's being discounted 30%, that means the amount you have to pay is actually only 70%. So you can realize that. So find 70% of the sale price, and that will give you how much that you pay. So that is our second approach. We can just find 70% of 120, and that will be our answer. So 70% of 120, we would do 0.7 times 120. 7 times 120, we have 7 times 12 is 84. We add a 0, but then our decimal point needs to go over one place because we have one digit right here after the decimal point. So our solution would be 84.0 or 84. So two different approaches to get the same solution. So again, you can use whichever method you find simplest, but either will get you the same answer. Another example, here we are dealing with hamburgers. So the hamburger at Burger King costs 20% more than a McDonald's. If McDonald's hamburger costs $1.40, what is the price of a hamburger at Burger King? Which, by the way, these numbers are not precise. We're just making an example here. But again, two different ways we can approach this problem. So here we're trying to figure out what is 20% more than $1.40. That's our end goal. So method one is we can find 20% of 140, then add that to 140. All right, so 20% of 140, we would do 0.2 times 140. 2 times 140 would be 280. But then our decimal point needs to go over 1, 2, 3 places because we have 3 digits after the decimal points. So move it over 3 places, 1, 2, 3. That gives you 28 cents. So the increase in price is 28 cents. So that means that at Burger King, the price is 28 cents more than at McDonald's. So if we add 28 cents to $1.40, that gives you the sale price at Burger King, which would be $1.68. Now we can use a second approach to get the same answer. So if we realize that $1.40 is like 100%, that is the full cost. And at Burger King, it costs 20% more. So 100% plus 20 more percent, that gives you 120%. So what we can do is we can use that and find 120% of $1.40. That's what we're doing right here. So that's another approach. So if we could just find 120% of 140, that gives you the same answer. So we multiply 120% times 140. So 120% as a decimal, move our decimal point over 2 places, that gives you 1.2. So we have 1.2 times 140. It's 1.2 times 140, or 1.4, same thing. This one, the numbers are a little bit bigger to work with, but we do 2 times 4 to get 8, 4 times 1 is 4. Put a 0 and repeat. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1. We add, and we get 8, 6, 1. And then the way we set this up, we had 2 digits after our decimal point, which means our decimal point in our solution goes over 2 places to get $1.68. So the sale price at Burger King would be $1.68, and we see that we get the same solution using either method. One more example. Here we are told that 5 out of 13 students plan to go to the party. And the question is, what percentage of the students will be attending? All right, so again, with this one, we have 2 different methods we can use. And this one's a little different than the other types of problems in this lesson. We're kind of throwing it in here because we're dealing with percentage. So 5 out of 13 students plan to go to the party. So one approach is realize that we are doing 5 out of 13 total. So if we divide 5 by 13, that gives us a decimal number, and then just convert that to a percent. So that is our first approach. So if we do that process, 5 divided by 13, put a decimal point and a 0 here, 13 goes into 53 times. 3 times 13 is 39. Subtract, we get 11. And then we can add another 0, bring it down, and repeat. 13 can go into 110. We can experiment. We'd find that it goes in 8 times. 8 times 13, we have 24, carry the 2. 8 times 1 plus 2 is 10, so that would be 104. Subtract, we get 6. we add a 0, bring it down, and repeat. 13 goes into 60 4 times. 4 times 13 is 52. Subtract, we get 8. And we could keep going. Let's do one more. 8, bring down to 0, and repeat. 13 goes into 80. That would be 6 times. 6 times 13 is 78. Subtract, we get 2. And as we see, this would keep going, and our decimal point goes right there. So if we keep going, it's going to be 0.384615, etc. But we don't need to keep going too far, because to convert to a percent, our decimal point just needs to move over 2 places, 1, 2. That gives you 38.4615%, which you can round that to, let's say, the 100th place. That'd be 38.46%. So that is one approach, and probably one of the more common approaches to finding the percentage. But I want to show you another method that you could also use. Another method is we could create a proportion solve. So this one, if we realize that we are that 5 out of 13 means we have a fraction of 5 over 13. Okay, realize that is our fraction. But we're trying to convert that to a percent. Percent, by definition, means something, some number divided by 100. So the question is, what number is that? So what we have here is a little proportion that we can solve. So we set up our proportion, and then we could cross multiply to solve this. So we see our proportion typed up right here in the notes. And then to solve, we can cross multiply. 13 times n equals 5 times 100. 13 times n equals 5 times 100, which is 500. And then solve by dividing both sides by 13. If we divide by 13, we now have n equals 500 divided by 13. And we're going to save the division process for you to do on your own. But if we do 500 divided by 13, we would find that our solution would be the exact same. It would be 38.46. So our percent is 38.46% using both method 1 and method 2. So in this video, you've learned how to find the percent of a given number by converting the percentage to a fraction and a decimal. And you've also learned how to use percentages to solve real-life examples. And that concludes our lesson for today. We will see you next time.